Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode where we get your questions answered from the Property Management Mastermind Group. Today, we're excited to have Ben of Black Sheep Global here to join us and share all things property management, software, technology related. He is an expert in the field of knowing what softwares to use, how to set them up, and we're excited to have him here to share some of his expertise. So, Ben, welcome and thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Brian.
Absolutely. Well, we'll jump right into it. We get a lot of questions about different softwares, and they're usually phrased in kind of a comparison type of way. And like we were talking before, you had mentioned, not you may have personal preferences, but one company may be better suited to one software compared to another. So instead of saying which one's better, I want to ask you, but looking at Aply and LeadSimple, which we know are two common software that property management companies are using now, and some even deciding between. Looking at those two softwares, what are some reasons that one company might choose to use LeadSimple compared to Aptly or vice versa?
Yeah, great question, Brian. I think when you consider this question, you really have to take that personalized approach. It's kind of like buying jeans, right? You go to the store, you want to buy some Levi's. Levi's are great for some people, but they're not for everybody, right? Some people want to get, a little American Eagle, whatever other brand that's your thing. You really do have to look for your personalized best fit. And the same thing is true when it comes to any property management software, particularly in relation to LeadSimple and Aptly. LeadSimple and Aptly really live in the space of process management, right? Or process workflows. There's a lot of different tools out there. There's lots of project management tools like Monday.com or Trello, and those are great, but they're not process tools. They are project tools. So LeadSimple and Aptly are both in the process space. Now, some key differentiators between the two softwares. The reality of each software is that the way that we see it today is not how it was originally. So what I like to do is look at the original assumptions that went into the product to better understand how it works today and whether it's going to be the right choice for me. As a specific example, LeadSimple started as a CRM. So everything is very CRM centric in the way that the data is organized, in the way that you move back and forth through the platform. It's all CRM specific.
Mhm.
On the flip side, Apply was inbox specific, right? That's where it's been designed, and all the other features and options it has now have sprung out of that communication centric starting point. So that's really a key differentiator. And I think many people, let's say newer operators, are very attracted to LeadSimple because it has that CRM feel. And most newer operators are, a little bit smaller, and maybe they are focused primarily on sales. So they see CRM, that's for me, right?
Sure.
Whereas in some cases, more established companies may be switching from some other platform to Apple, and they say, okay, inbox centric, I want to have shared communication inboxes. Maybe this is the better tool for me. LeadSimple has inbox too, right? But in my opinion, the inbox is a little bit stronger in Apply today.
Okay.
I'm really excited about where both platforms are headed, and ultimately, I think the more competition we can have in this space, the better, because it's only making the individual platforms one up each other and get way
Sure.
better as time passes. So I'm super excited about where we're headed, particularly for these process tools.
Hey there, I'm Brian Hughes, founder of BizDev Mastermind. If you own a property management company, you already know growth doesn't happen by accident. It takes the right strategy, the right systems, and the right people. That's where we come in. At BizDev Mastermind, we help property management companies like yours build a real business development process, one that brings in more doors, more revenue, and gives you, as the owner of the company, more freedom. Our program is designed specifically for property managers who are serious about scaling. We don't do generic sales training. We focus on what works in the single family property management industry, from lead generation through referrals, social media, and other organic channels, to hiring and training high performing sales and business development staff. It's what we've done since 2020. If you've been waiting on growth to just happen, it's time to change that. With the right plan, your business can thrive and you don't have to do it alone. So if you're ready to take control of your growth, let's schedule a call. Let's make this the year you finally expand your portfolio, increase your revenue, and amplify your impact. Check the link below and let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really exciting. I've heard feedback from other companies of, how both of these tools have revolutionized their business and make things much smoother and much more efficient. So, that's great. So looking at these two tools in a nutshell, for someone who's completely new to both of these softwares and they're hearing about them, they're thinking they're a new property management business, or maybe they're even established, but they're thinking, wow, these tools really seem like they could help my business, but I don't really fully understand exactly what they do. At a really, kind of high level, if you could explain, just maybe give a specific example of how either Aply or LeadSimple, or maybe both, could be used for, different property management operations or processes.
Absolutely. So property management as a business is made up of processes. The reality of any business is that they're all made up of processes, but
Sure.
in property management, they're very tangible, and they're very cyclical. So if you go to the grocery store and buy an orange, technically speaking, that's a process, right? The orange had to go through a process to get to the store. It had to be cleaned. It had to be picked from the tree. There's a lot of different things that happen again and again and again for that orange to get there. In property management, the same thing is true, but it's very replicable and very tangible, like I mentioned. So a great example of that would be, let's say, a move-in process, right? Every time that you have a new tenant that's going to move into a property, they need to go through the same series of tasks. Now, while there are going to be slight variations depending on your local market and specifics of the property and maybe your particular business, generally we're going to need to do the same things, right? You need to have that security deposit picked up, first month's rent. You need to make sure keys get handed off. We've done a pre-move-in property inspection, right? These basics that every company knows. Now, the need for the process comes into play when we recognize the reality that we are all human and we are all forgetful and imperfect, right? So the process exists so that you can reduce errors, right?
Mhm.
That's the reason to have processes at all. So using a software like a LeadSimple or Aply is enhancing your ability to not make errors, right? And when
Right.
you are an individual service provider, you're just one person. But as soon as you get bigger, right, everything gets much more complicated as you have more people, and errors
Sure.
are far more likely to happen. So using a process tool allows you to reduce those errors and ultimately provide better service, make your company more scalable.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, if you're running with a bunch of checklists and notes and paper and things like that, this is a software that's going to take all of that, digitize it, and make sure your post-it notes and stickies don't get lost somewhere, or your communication isn't, in limbo. It's going to keep things more efficient and on track. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think something that's important to point out here is that even sticky notes and paper checklists have a place, right?
Sure.
Especially for property management companies that are younger. If you have nothing, you should start there. Get your sticky notes, get your checklist.
Yeah.
Put them in a Word document and print it out, and just repeat it time after time.
Mhm.
But when you want to level that up, right, as your team increases and you need to be more efficient, and it makes more sense to look at a digital solution, something
Yeah.
that doesn't cost you as much paper, right?
Yeah.
Something that never misprints, something
Yeah.
that shows up on a schedule. So these are pieces that are really important that not everybody considers when we're looking at the business, right? I think the reality of this is that many people are focused on the property, which is totally
Mhm.
reasonable because it's a property management company for crying out loud,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But when you scale back a little bit and you think about it just more as a business altogether, right? This is really an opportunity for you to add value to other people's lives.
Mhm.
And the more effectively and efficiently you can do that, the better. So using tools that are tailor-made for your industry
Mhm.
makes sense. And that's one of the reasons that I just love doing this type of work for people because to me, it really is, taking off the proverbial glasses and you can see all this incredible power that you have within your business just by capturing what you do on a day-to-day basis and turning it into this repeatable process that's no longer locked up in your head.
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. Yeah, a process is something that can be repeated time and time over again. Your sticky notes and checklists, maybe not so much. But good
Absolutely.
point on start wherever you can. Okay, moving on to the next question. Another comparison that I see a lot, especially in the mastermind group, are people asking, should I choose AppFolio or should I choose Rentvine? We know AppFolio has been around for a while, and there's plenty of people who are married to it. They've grown their whole business within AppFolio, and they love it. And then there's people who have switched to Rentvine, and they're singing their praises, and they're loving it as well. So for someone who's maybe considering both of the software, maybe has one thinking about switching to the other, what are some reasons what are some reasons that someone might be better suited for AppFolio or better suited for Rentvine, if you could speak to that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to consider right off the bat. Number one, for AppFolio, they require a larger door count. You need to have 100 doors in order to get an AppFolio account. So that's a major limiter for some smaller companies who are just getting started, and definitely a reason to consider an alternative. In addition to that, AppFolio has a lot of per door fees, right? So there are, some escalating costs that go along as you adopt more of the platform. Now, on the plus side of AppFolio, in many ways, it is a one-stop solution, right? You can get the majority of the tools that you need to manage properties pretty quickly and easily, right? You have your all of your trust accounting in one place, all of your leasing in one place if you want, all of your inspections, all of your work order management, all of these pieces are in place with one login. And that's very attractive to a lot of people. Personally, that doesn't bother me. I think that in many cases, it's better to choose the tool that's best designed for the job. But that's for me, right? Again, we're talking about a very subjective type of conversation. So if you have a team that is maybe less technologically literate and you want them to have one place that they go, AppFolio might be a really good solution for you. It's also a publicly traded company, so there's a lot of meat behind their expansion and their growth, and they are making waves in a lot of the rollouts that they're doing in recent years. I'm really excited about what they're doing with the Realm X platform. It's not something I've been able to explore too extensively yet, but the little bit that I see there is very powerful. So I think that's super encouraging and definitely paints a positive picture for the future of AppFolio. Now, comparing that,
I'm sorry, I gotta ask, what is Realm X? What is that? Do you
yeah.
have
So
any?
sure, I can give a high level.
Yeah.
So Realm X is I think it's about 2 years old now, so it's relatively recent. Although it got pushed out in a much more significant way at the recent event. I'm blanking out on the title of the event, but it was just this last year. And Realm X is effectively some integrated AI workflows.
Okay.
So as a for instance, you could set up a workflow within your AppFolio platform and have it respond to um, inquiries about maintenance, or have it basically access the enormous database that AppFolio is holding, and provide information kind of on command. Now, like I said, there's definitely some places where it's like, oh wow, this looks amazing, and then some other spots like, okay, there's some development needed here.
Sure.
And I think if we're talking about process automation, I think that LeadSimple and Aply still have a superior product to AppFolio in that regard. But
Sure.
neither LeadSimple nor Aply are trust accounting software, and I think that's what AppFolio does incredibly well. So
Yeah.
can't say enough good things about AppFolio. I think they're doing some really wonderful stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, to transition a little bit and
Yep.
bring Rentvine up, I'm a big fan of Rentvine. One of the reasons is philosophically, we're very much in alignment. They are what I would like to call an open kimono company, where they really put themselves in a place of giving significantly, right? They have a flat per door rate that gives you access to everything that they create. They don't have an API that is blocked by an extra charge, right? It's just here's everything that we ever make available to you, and I really appreciate that. Working on primarily external platforms, Rentvine makes so much available that it's really easy to integrate platforms together. And with my general perspective around using the tool that's best designed for the job, that's highly valuable to me personally, to be able to connect Rentvine and Aply or LeadSimple, or connect it with Tenant Turner or ShowMojo or any one of the other dozen software companies I could name offhand. Being able to have those easy connections is a really big deal to me. Now, it may not be a big deal. Again, may not be a big deal to you. So when to our listeners here, and so I think it's very valid to say what is most important for me today, right? Do I need to have easy, simple, or do I want to have super high tech, right?
Sure.
And sometimes easy and simple is the right answer.
Yeah.
It really depends on kind of where you are in the development of your company.
Wow, some really good points, and a lot of it makes sense. And that something I'm kind of realizing now is I've watched companies that we've worked with start off with AppFolio, and they've grown and they've done really well, and they've switched to Rentvine at a certain point because they wanted more capability and maybe more connection access. So that's a really good point that I've seen play out in real life, as I'm sure you have. Um, so kind of moving on from the comparisons, which was great, and hopefully a lot of people listening to this got some good info on each of these platforms. We were talking about, not necessarily specific softwares, but different software areas where maybe management companies are not adopting specific types of software, or maybe in areas where they should be adopting software and they're not. Are there any areas or types of software that you see management companies maybe should adopt more, or you would maybe encourage them to adopt more?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. I actually have a list that I can reference here. Whenever I have a conversation with one of my prospects, and hopefully, some of the folks from this recording may give me a call. I'd love to talk with you. But we go through this same list of trying to understand what your tech stack looks like, and there's usually somewhere around 11 to 12 key components that every property management company has. And like I said, they may be on the more simple side. You may not have all these, but these are the general categories of software that I suggest that every PM consider using. So you have your trust accounting tool, right? That's your AppFolio, Rentvine, Buildium, etc. You're going to have your corporate accounting tool, which for a lot of people is like QuickBooks. Then you're going to have your processes tool, right? That's your LeadSimple, Aply, etc. And you're going to have some type of signature collection tool. You'll have some type of self-showing tool, very likely, and some type of form platform. Depending on how your company is set up, if you have people overseas or in multiple states, you may have an internal communications tool like a Slack or Teams or something similar. You also need to have an inspections tool, right? And a work order management tool and some type of phone platform. And then last but definitely not least, some kind of automation platform. There's lots of different no-code automation platforms that are available today. And I think it's my opinion, so feel free to shoot it down here. But for a property management company running today, if you are not at least considering the need to automate portions of your business, you are losing out, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
already past at some level the automation phase. We're now in agentic AI, where we have workflows that are developing for AI agents to do the work for you. So if you're just thinking about automation today, I'm glad you are, but you got to pump it up, guys, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of opportunity using technology. And the reality of this is larger property management companies are using this technology to get big, right? This is how it
Yes.
happens. They take the approach of, we're going to have an acceptable loss of, let's call it customer service. And as long as we do, 90% of our customer service great, and we use an agentic AI, then we're saving X number of dollars and we can bring on this many doors faster, right? That's how they're
Yeah.
winning.
Yeah.
And these platforms are available to you, to everybody, right? You can get this for a song, and have access to these really powerful platforms. Now, where the rubber meets the road, this is where me and my team come into play, is in helping you actually make it happen, because there's so many different subscriptions and platforms and cool things that you can get. And yes, it is urgent, right?
Mhm.
But it's hard to execute on that because you're already running a business.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's where Black Sheep really comes into play, helping our clients actually achieve that operational excellence and the integration of the platforms.
That's great. The question I just kind of thought of, I know anytime new software is implemented or anything new at a company, it's ultimately a lot of times the, frontline employees or even sometimes management, but not necessarily you as the owner who are actually clicking the buttons and implementing
Right.
things in most cases. Any tips on how to get buy-in from your frontline employees or the people who are actually going to be using this maybe new
Absolutely.
software day to day?
Yeah. So a key thing that I think everyone needs to recognize is it's not just about software, it's about change management,
Mhm.
right? So implementing a software, while it's a cool idea and oftentimes can be of high value, ultimately comes down to managing the change, which means making the process of the change as seamless as possible and
Yeah.
as friction-free as possible. Now, in
Yeah.
order for those things to be true, that means that your team has to trust you, and your team also has to be bought in. And that team buy-in is really the key piece. So team, now I could riff on this for a very long time about team trust and culture and
Sure.
all this, but I won't get too far down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
The key piece in implementation, if you want to have your team buy-in, is that the team actually has to be involved in the process, right?
Sure.
For the business owner, you are the visionary most of the time. You are the one who sees the opportunity. So you may bring this software in because you see this is an opportunity for us as a company.
Yeah.
But in order for that software to actually be helpful and cross the finish line, your team has to be bought in. So the best way that I know to do that is to have your team involved in the implementation process. So as an example, when we are working on a process automation software, we involve the team in documenting the process. I don't just talk to the business owner or to the COO. We're going to talk to the frontline people because we want to get their perspective on how this process works and what doesn't work, because they're the ones who know what are the real challenges in the process and where people get mad and where things get lost and where so-and-so always drops the ball, or where we could do something better than we're currently doing it, but we can't because of X, Y, and Z. So when your team is involved in that process, they then have ownership, right?
Sure.
And as soon as they have ownership, then they care about it. Up until that point, it doesn't really matter, right? It's more of an annoying thing that your company leadership is giving you and you have to deal with and just make it part of your life. And life sucks and, that's horrible. But if you actually have ownership in that, then you have, it's a totally different ballgame. I think the best example I can give for this is many years ago, I read a book on owning mobile home parks.
Okay.
It was a very interesting concept at the time. I was very new in real estate. I was like, oh, this is cool. I could invest in a mobile home park. And the thing that stuck with me is that in a mobile home park, if you want to have a successful, healthy park where there's no crime and just like limited issues, you want your residents to own their units.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah,
If they
absolutely.
own their
They're bought
units,
in.
they have pride of ownership, right?
Mhm.
They have spent their $70, $100, $120,000, and yes, they're paying you lot rent, so it's less that's going into your pocket, but you have a better, safer, more stable investment. And the same is true when you talk about process implementation. The team is bought in; they own their trailer, and they want to stay there because they built it. So that's just a little philosophical tangent there.
Yeah, no, I love it. Absolutely. I mean, it totally makes sense. And I think we all know that the team needs buy-in, but we kind of struggle maybe sometimes on how to get that buy-in. And, telling them that this is going to make us X amount more revenue and profit maybe
They don't
isn't
care.
the best way to get their buy-in. A better approach is like you said, have them take ownership of it and be involved in that implementation, which is I think is a great tip. Okay, one more question for you, and another kind of debates and discussion that we've seen discussed in the mastermind group and elsewhere is the discussion on how to structure your company or your business. There's tons of different structures, but a couple that we see more often than not are pods and portfolios. So maybe if you could start off by describing the difference between a pod type of setup in a property management company and a portfolio.
Sure. There's actually a third category that I want to mention here as we break these down, and the three of this. So there's pods, there are portfolios, and then there's departments. So to give kind of a basic definition of the three most common ways of running the business, departments is very basic. You have effectively 5 to 6 departments in every business. You have your operations, you have your sales and marketing, you have your accounting, you have HR, you have leadership, and sometimes you're going to throw in something else just because, right?
Yeah, sure.
In your pod method, you typically have one person who's your primary point of contact, who is your property manager usually, and then often they have an assistant property manager and then maybe a maintenance person. That group of people usually is responsible for a set sector of properties, usually governed by a particular area where they have ownership over that. And more often than not, those pods are made up of remote team members. I found that to be more common than having on-site team members. Now, the last category, well, actually, one other note about pods, right? You have kind of your pod structure, and then more often than not, there is kind of a hybrid approach where you have a back office department that handles more of the paperwork, doing more of the accounting work, and less so on the pod itself. Then that final category would be portfolios. And portfolios is more of a one person, maybe with an assistant, and they do absolutely everything that is related to that particular property. So there's pluses and minuses within each of these models. And to give a little bit of perspective, I made this observation on a LinkedIn post earlier this week. But
Mhm.
what I often observe is that for a young property management company, call it sub 100 doors,
Yeah,
they usually run departmentally.
yeah,
And it's because there's very few people in the company, right?
sure.
Ultimately, these structures that we're talking about are people structures, not
Yep.
really company structures. It's a way to organize the people. So you run in departments because you have few people, and I'm going to do all these things, and then my other person over here is going to do all the other things, and that's just how it shakes out.
Yeah,
Um, but as the company grows, usually between 150 to 200 doors, there's a fluctuation. You've got more people. You probably made it to three, maybe even four employees,
Mhm.
could be even larger, and things start to break down a little bit. We've got to have more definition. So oftentimes there is then an appointed property manager, an assistant, and then maybe a few people who are running the back office. And the philosophy there is that, well, if we have some solid back office staff, they can probably handle the work coming out of multiple pods. So we'll have pod number one, and then we'll build up and have pod number two and pod number three, and then we'll add to the group as needed, which I think can be a great way to do things.
Yeah. I've
But go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've definitely noticed companies tend to change over time. I think, like you're alluding to, you start off with either a portfolio or departmental and then, shift as you continue to grow into pods. Is there any, particular style, if you were starting a management company today, starting completely from scratch, or let's say you bought a 80 unit portfolio and that's where you're starting from, somewhere in that range, would you go pick any particular style of, organizing your business or your people? Or would you see yourself more kind of adjusting as you continue to grow, maybe going from one to another?
Yeah, I would absolutely be adjusting over time.
Yeah,
As I alluded to me, this is more about organizational structure,
sure.
and that changes as you have different people, you have different talents. It's going to change, so you really have to be willing to acknowledge that it's going to be completely different than what you thought it was going to be. But I probably would start in a pod style of approach because I think that does work well at a relatively smaller size. And then as time passed, I would roll into a department. So I think that does make more sense at a larger door count.
Yeah, I agree. I think just making that point that you will shift over time is important for the listeners because you may be thinking, okay, what's my organizational structure right now today? How can I will this scale in 15 years or 10 years or however long? But the reality is it's going to change and just accept, do what works for you now and know that in the future it may change and that's okay.
Absolutely.
Well, good deal. Well, Ben, I thank you for being here and sharing your expertise with the group. And anyone who wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you if they have more questions about what you do and want to talk to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like to find out more about what we do at Black Sheep, you can visit our website, which is blacksheepglobal.net. We currently are at capacity, so I hate to say it, but if you call me today, I won't be able to sign you up, but I'd still love to talk to you. We've got a bit of a waiting list that's going on right now, and we really philosophically we try to operate at capacity so that our team gets taken care of, and also every one of our clients gets the attention that they deserve. So that's a big philosophical thing for me. But you can reach us at blacksheepglobal.net. And if you're interested just in kind of chatting more and learning more about how we think, we also have a dedicated group where we meet twice a week to nerd out about process and technology. It's called Processes Made Simple. You can find us at our website, which is processesmadesimple.io. And we'd love to hear from you there or have you join us at any time.
Very good. Excellent. Take advantage of that. Join. All right. Thanks again, Ben, for being here and sharing your expertise. We'll look forward to having you on again here at some point. But thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much.